Okay, so if you guys aren't aware, there's been this kind of war going on between Bart K and myself. Really, I'm not trying to engage in it. I'm trying to just put out the clinical evidence to support my notions. If you're not aware of how this actually started, I had put a video out on how diet affects acid-base balance, and then Bart had put out a video basically saying that I'm incorrect. So he is actually, if you look back and you go back to his video, he's actually strawmanning me because he was saying that, well, his response to me was that diet cannot significantly affect blood pH or bicarbonate to any meaningful way because of the Stewart model, because they are dependent on other levers, okay? I never used the word dependent or independent. I never said that eating a animal-based diet is going to independently moderate the pH. I don't care if it independently or dependently does. All I care about is what actually happens. All I said is that if you consume a high animal protein diet not balanced with base, it will induce low-grade metabolic acidosis. And he said false because his beliefs are different than mine. However, I never utilize the words dependent or independent, first of all. Of course, liberating protons and bicarbonate is going to be dependent on other things. I've made it very clear the kidneys and the respiratory system also affects pH. That's not what we care about, nor what I said. I said that the diet can absolutely affect the acid-base balance. Whether it's dependent or independent doesn't matter. He came after me saying it cannot because it's dependent. Now he's backpedaling and strawmanning me and saying, well, it can, but it's just not to a significant degree, and it's also still dependent. Okay, and I'm gonna explain why I believe that's incorrect. So he's actually strawmanning me. So back to the point of the fact that essentially the main thing here is that what's clinically relevant and what's not. Very difficult to ascertain, right? Is this a meaningful change or not? Well, first, if you actually look at acid-forming diets versus base-forming diets, there is a highly statistically significant difference in even blood pH. Now, I've made it very clear interstitial fluid becomes acidic before blood because blood has many buffers for base. It has hemoglobin, it has albumin that can bind the hydrogen ions and basically mask low-grade metabolic acidosis in the interstitial fluid. So we know the interstitial fluid becomes acidic first because not only from the limited capacity of the interstitial fluid to handle acid loads, but also the animal studies show that the interstitial fluid, which surrounds all the receptors on your cells, insulin receptors, thyroid receptors, becomes acidic before blood. So that's something key that I want you to think about throughout this video. But the clinical studies in humans giving acid-based diets versus alkaline-forming diets shows a highly statistically significant difference in steady-state proton concentration and bicarb concentration. So to give you some numbers, on average, alkaline-forming diets can basically have a steady-state pH of like 7.41, 7.42. Acid-forming diets are more like 7.38, 7.37. And there are studies showing that actually measurements, more than one measurement, can go down even below 7.36 on an acid-forming diet. Technically, the normal range is 7.35 to 7.45. However, when you are on the lower end of normal, your body is definitely much more acidic and likely out of the normal range in the interstitial fluid because it's barely able to keep it normal in the blood, which has many better buffers than the interstitial fluid. So keep that in mind as well. So in other words, the clinical studies prove my point that we're talking about p-values of 0.002, highly statistically significant differences in even blood pH consuming an acid-forming diet versus a base-forming diet. Now, here's the clincher. He made a positive claim. He made a positive claim that acid-base balance in regards to diet does not meaningfully harm a human. Number one, how would you even prove that? There have not even been studies going out years or decades to prove your positive claim. So how would you prove that, Bart? Okay, crickets, you're not going to be able to prove that. No one can. However, my basis is that there are potential harms. I've made this very clear. And if you look at the human clinicals, how would you support your positive claim that there are no harms, BART, of consuming a high acid forming diet, when numerous metabolic ward studies have shown that when you consume a high acid forming diet, it can put people into negative calcium balance. It can significantly increase bone resorption markers and significantly decrease bone formation markers. How would you support your claim that the dietary acid load cannot affect the acid-base balance of the body to any meaningful way when we know that it can put people into negative calcium balance? It significantly increases uric acid in the urine, and it increases bone resorption markers and decreases bone formation markers. Please explain how you can state on a human living for an entire lifespan that consuming a high acid forming diet not offset by base has no meaningful harms, based on the clinical metabolic ward studies proving back to 1930 with Stephenson that it induces negative calcium balance and that there is no positive balance even after about 4 months on these diets. You're still losing 175 milligrams every single day of calcium, every single day, even after 120 days essentially. Please explain and justify your position. You cannot. You cannot. So again, you came and attacked me, and you're essentially incorrect. You're strawmanning me by saying, well, it's dependent. So Stewart proves that it can't change the pH to any meaningful way. Stewart's model cannot prove anything. It cannot. Excreting 150 to 250 milliequivalents of acid on a high acid forming diet has not been disproven to have no negative effects based on the Stewart model, which, by the way, you did not make it clear that that is a construct, which is your main argument against everyone else, that you can't use constructs to support a theory because it's based on epistemology, it's based on theology. It has not been proven experimentally, so you cannot use Stewart's model. And you never made it clear to your followers that Stewart's model is nothing but a theory, that it can't prove me incorrect, which you said I was incorrect. So how are you proving me incorrect, Bart? Please explain, because the Stewart model cannot do that. Okay. I think that's good enough for now. Happy to, and I'm not going to live debate this guy because he's strawmanning me all day, but I'm happy to keep putting out the clinical studies showing the potential harms. Not to mention, here's another good point. The studies looking at normal, healthy people, once they're 70, 80, 90, showing clinically significantly low based on the normal values of bicarbonate to be below the normal value of bicarbonate, which is, the normal value is 22 to 30 milliequivalents per liter. When you look at normal, healthy people, they are below 22. They have clinically significant low bicarb by the time they're 70. So how can you say for sure that people aren't going clinically significantly low in bicarb when we know that normal healthy humans do, even with normal kidney function by the time they're 70? Please explain that one to me as well.